Hi, I'm Whitney Espich, the CEO of the MIT Alumni Association, and I hope you enjoy this digital production created for alumni and friends like you.
Good afternoon. Welcome to the MIT Faculty Forum. I'm Victoria Gonin, the Executive Director of Alumni Relations in the MIT Alumni Association, and I'll serve as your moderator today. Today's broadcast is sponsored in part by the MIT Federal Credit Union, MIT Professional Education, and MIT Sloan Executive Education. As a reminder, we welcome your questions during this chat. Alumni joining us via Zoom can use the question and answer feature found on your toolbar. For those on YouTube, you can add your questions to the comment field next to the stream. We also encourage you to use tweet using hashtag MIT alum, and we will get to as many questions as we can. Joining me today, Elazer Edelman, the Edward Poitras Professor in Medical Engineering and Science and the Director of the Institute for Medical Engineering and Science at MIT. Also joining us is Martin Culpepper, SM 97, PhD 0, Professor of Medical Engineering and Director of MIT's Project Manus. You can read their illustrious bios in the link provided. So first of all, I want to welcome both of you for joining us on this very, very busy time. Beginning in late March, Edelman and Culpepper led the MIT initiative to develop and mass produce low-cost face shields and donate personal protective equipment, PPE, from campus entities to frontline health workers in hospitals in response to COVID-19 pandemic. We know today they'll be able to provide us an update on some of the early results of these efforts, as well as an update on the ongoing MIT research and initiatives directed towards this. Welcome, professors, to today's faculty forum.
Thank you. So I'm going to share my screen with all of you. I hope you can see this. This is an actual gift from the daughter of one of our alumni. It shows you all the very many things that MIT is doing, because as an MIT alumnus and MIT faculty member, someone who's been at MIT for almost my entire adult life, the questions I have is, what is MIT doing at this incredibly difficult time? About a month ago, Maria Zuber, the Vice President for Research, and Raphael Reif, President, asked us to manage a medical outreach and crisis management unit that would not only, frankly, deal with the immediate needs, but be available for the entirety and for memoriam for crises that should arrive. Like all good MIT people, the first thing we do is try to understand what's going on, and I'll talk very, very briefly about research you'll hear in other forums. But the other thing we'll talk about is how the MIT community stood up in an almost magical way to help our colleagues in the hospitals. Research is throughout the MIT campus, and these are just examples of some of my colleagues who are working actively to examine new means of detecting the virus, new means of combating the virus, new means of providing safe distancing for first-line responders, and even understanding how far one needs to be away to be safe. We're not going to talk about these things now, but you should be aware that this is a very active part of what MIT is contributing. When the management unit was set up, one of the first things we did was to realize that as we were reducing the campus footprint by about 90%, we had an extraordinary opportunity to take all the unopened personalized protective equipment and contributed it to our colleagues. They were in dire need of face masks, of face shields, of purified air purifying respirators, of gloves, gowns, of everything, of sanitized wipes, of swabs and culture media. And we had this in abundance. What happened was we started to accumulate, as people left, things in the tens of thousands. Because we operated so effectively, we soon were inundated. And this is what our mailroom looks like at the beginning of every day, with what are now hundreds of thousands of PPEs that we've been able to distribute throughout Massachusetts. Donations have been to the huge hospitals and medical centers, and to senior living facilities, to small clinics, and as well the Cambridge Police and Fire Department. We have now distributed over 750,000 PPEs, and we anticipate millions coming in through our contacts through you, our alumni network. This is a picture of me. I also serve as an attending physician in the intensive care unit of one of Boston's major medical centers. And what's remarkable about this picture is not only am I outside a room with contact precautions, but I'm wearing PPEs that were made by or donated by or invented in collaboration with MIT. Professor Culpepper will talk about the shields, the masks, the gloves, and even this stethoscope, which communicates via Bluetooth to a remote speaker, allows us to protect not only the people we take care of, but their families, and not only us, but our families. In closing, what I'd say is that some 23 laboratories, centers, and departments at MIT have contributed now well over 725, almost 750,000 PPEs, which we've distributed through harnessing facilities, maintenance, the mailroom, in partnership with the Sloan School, in partnership with our alumni network. Millions of PPEs will be coming in. We've been able to partner with emergency response teams throughout Massachusetts, New England, and indeed the federal government, and are now working on everything from these advanced distancing units to very simple things like making sure that people are safe. In that, I close by saying what I said all the time since this has started. It's a very sad time, it's a very sobering time, but it's a magical time because MIT did what it's supposed to do. It raised itself up to meet its moral obligation to harness science, technology, and engineering to improve the human condition. And I'm really proud that the place that I have been at for most of my life has responded so wonderfully. So with that, I'll turn it to my colleague, Professor Culpepper, who talked about the masks.
All right. So thank you, Elazer. I just want everyone to know that all the great work that we're doing would not be possible without his leadership. He has done a masterful job, not only of being able to marshal people within MIT, but then also connect us with people outside of MIT. So I'll show a few slides here that talk about the face shield, but I want everybody to understand that this was the consequence of setting up the medical outreach team and the crisis management team. So what you see on the screen here, this is a list of all the people internally at MIT that have helped out with this project. But then also to the right of the screen in blue, these are external entities. It's very difficult in a short amount of time to put together this kind of group of people, but through the efforts of Elazer and the rest of the teams that have been working on COVID, it's possible to get all these people to work together. It's really a unique thing. So for something like a face shield, which seems very simple, it took all these people to make it happen. When we got started in this process, there were a million things that people were contacting us about, but we had to make decisions on what is it that MIT could do to make an impact. And so we started focusing with respect to PPE on things that either filled the gap in supply. So if people were short on a particular item, could we make these for them? And then second to that was, in this situation, medical practitioners are burning through PPE at an extraordinary rate. And are there things that we could do to reduce that burn rate? And it just so happens that a face shield is a double bonus there. It actually gives you protection, but then it also protects and prolongs the life of a mask or a respirator. So this is one of the things that was targeted that's been brought through this process. And again, this is one of many things that we're working on right now, but it's a good example of how, you know, having this team stood up and then the processes that we've run, how we've had a success. The face shield starts out as a flat piece of plastic. The reason for this, it's very easy to make things flat. It's very easy to make them fast, and it's very easy to make them low cost. And so we had a lot of other constraints on top of this, but those three things were key. In addition to this, if you're going to ship many of these to a location, you got to be able to ship them quickly, and it helps us to be able to fit 250 of these things in a box that's about 14 by 20 by 6 inches tall. So I'm going to move on to video here, and I'll talk through it. I'm going to voice over it to prevent confusion, but this again is Elazer in one of the hospitals. And what I'm explaining here is that this process, we went through this process of coming up with the idea of a face shield and then running through the first prototypes in about 2.5 to 3 hours. So the video you saw of a laser cutter cutting a face shield is actually the laser cutter I have in my basement. We're able to cut that, verify that it works, and then send that to larger machines on campus that could run faster and make larger face shields that we could then send out to be tested locally in the hospitals around Boston. And Elazer was fantastic at making the connections to people at those hospitals and then actually getting us quantifiable data and information back that we could use to refine the design of the face shield. So the face shield's in mass production right now. What you see here are die cutters. You know, to give you an analogy, when you make cookies, you lay out a flat sheet of dough and then you hit it with cookie cutters. This process is similar, except you got basically cookie cutters shaped like a face shield. And then as the plastic runs through a machine, it cuts out those shapes. As of today, they've tooled up several factories inside the United States. So several in Massachusetts, New Hampshire, North Carolina, a couple in California. They've tooled up a factory in Canada. Just heard that they're tooling up a factory in Mexico. And then they're in discussions to tool up a factory in Europe. In total, this project, you know, within the span of a couple of weeks, it was really extraordinary that every time we went to somebody on the MIT campus and we asked them for help, they basically dropped everything that they were doing, whether it was alumni, students, staff. And it was only through that and then the efforts of Elazer and others that we were able to pull this together. Right now, I believe they're producing at a rate of 150,000 per day. And the goal is to scale up to several million of these per week within about 2 to 3 weeks. So I'll stop here with the overview and pass it back for questions.
Great, thank you. Some questions are coming in, and a reminder to viewers to ask questions using the Q&A feature in Zoom or comment panel in your YouTube. So one of the early questions we have is what's being done in or for developing countries in Asia, Africa, or Latin America? And how can alumni help?
Elazer, you want that one, bud?
Sure. So one of the remarkable things about the virus of 2019-2020 is, unlike what happened in 1918, is that the global pandemic has elicited a global response. We are learning, quite honestly, from the experiences of those who suffered from this before us. We're in constant contact with our Asian colleagues, both physicians and scientists, as best practices. We are learning from them, and we're gaining from them in terms of access to PPEs. In return, Marty can share with you that everything that we're doing is being done gratis. And as a result, the materials, the designs, the best practices that we're making available to them. The research that we're doing in terms of vaccines, of risk and disease mitigation are all being shared. So I'll stop there just to make sure I answered the question. Please let me know if there was something more to that.
Okay.
And I'll I'll add on to that. You know, many of the things at MIT, it's been very easy to get these things out to share with people. Some of the things that we're doing, we're being careful with how those are shared. We want to avoid a situation where people, for example, try to make something and they may modify it so that it looks right like it will do the job, but it may not actually do the job. So we got a process to look at some of these things to make sure that when they go out, that they'll actually do the job that they should do. But it's been our goal to share as much as we can with people.
What I would say is if there are people on the line who want to gain access to these face shields or want to contribute, then we would be delighted, both Marty and I, to expedite that. There is a site for contributing. All the funds that go in for just disseminating this. Everybody that's worked on this project, the hundreds of people that Marty listed, everyone in all of those offices is doing this for nothing. We've expended all the discretionary funds from our institute that we have available to us. We've raised philanthropic contributions. And if there are people in your countries, if there are people who you're aware of who need access to this, just please let us know. And we would be delighted to work with you on finding ways of distributing these shields and any other PPEs to people at need.
Great, thank you. And we'll include a link to where some of those funds and donations can be made. Another question coming in is, can we sustain plastic production use? How can we design face shields for reuse?
We actually considered that in all of this. The face shields that we designed, the primary need was for a disposable shield. And the reason for this is that every time you go into a particular place where there's a patient, you put on PPE. And then when you come out, typically, and Elazer could talk in more detail or more length about this, but typically you have to discard that PPE. And so there are face shields that can be sterilized, but given the situation, some of the hospitals, we've been asked for face shields that are disposable. Now, all the materials that we are using currently are recyclable, so the hospitals can recycle those. They don't have to go into a landfill. The face shield was designed to be disposable, but the materials that we're using, they are compatible with the chemicals and the wipes that many of the places are using to sanitize, at least compatible for a few wipe downs of these. And though we haven't explicitly designed for that purpose, they can be wiped down and sanitized.
It's worth mentioning that the face shields actually preserve the more expensive, the more rare PPEs. So the respirators that we wear, the masks that we wear, anything else that we wear has this second barrier of the face shields. The face shields cost us probably a little bit more than $2 to manufacture, and that's what we need to recoup in order to continue. There is an effort to understand if, as you heard from Professor Culpepper, whether they can be reused, and under certain circumstances that is good practice. Under others, it's not. But using the face shields actually prolongs the ability of the really expensive N95 masks, the individual respirators, to be used. In terms of questions that are pouring in, there are so many that we won't be able to answer them all, but we will get back to you offline if need be. The bulk of the questions that are appearing on my screen are, what can you do to help? Well, you can do everything. If you let us know ideas that you have, we'll be happy to vet them. If you let us know contacts that you have to give us PPEs, we'd be delighted to drive them to where they need to go. If there are people that need the face shields and you know who they are, similarly, let us know and we will make sure they get there.
Thank you. Yes, everyone, I'm seeing the same questions. How can we help? Which is so, so wonderful. There was a question here that I thought was interesting. It was, what kind of advice could you give to GE and other manufacturing plants that might need to change around during a time of crisis? either now or for future planning of manufacturing setups?
One thing I would say, and we've run into this here dealing with some of the manufacturers in the state, is a real strong tie to the state, finding out exactly what it is that they need. All right. One could, for example, start making a variety of different PPE or devices in a company like this. But one of the hard lessons learned here, I think, of everybody in this situation, not just at MIT, is you can get these things made, but then you have to have a good port into the people that can distribute them. So, I think it's great that people are retooling factories to make a variety of PPE. For example, Ford, I believe GM are now making face shields. Apple is making face shields, and all those face shields are needed. But if you make them and they sit in boxes, you can't get them into a hospital because, for example, the hospital doesn't know if they can accept them. Or at the state, they need to distribute these things. If you have to go through a procurement process and it's not an easy it's not easy to get into that pipeline, that can be a bottleneck that basically stops all your efforts. So, beyond that, there are regulations, there are tests that need to be run on specific types of devices or PPE, and those are easy for people to look up online if they like. But I think, overall, the biggest problem that I've observed with people being able to make things and then get them used has been this interface between them and the hospital or the agencies that are going to distribute the PPEs.
Okay. There was a question, what is your estimated funding shortage basis on the amount of masks you expect to donate? So what's that gap look like?
So for the face shields, I think the question is on face shields.
Mm-hmm.
We're talking, I don't have a current tally of it because things have moved pretty quickly, but we're talking six figures, probably $200,000, $300,000. But this is just one project, right? Elazer mentioned the Bluetooth stethoscopes. All these other projects, Elazer has a better handle on what kind of funds are necessary to get these things launched and to keep them running. But just for the face shields, we're talking about several hundred thousands just for materials. That doesn't include the time of all the people that have been spent working on it, et cetera.
So one of the things that positions MIT well is that it's an honest broker in all of this. It does not have, or it didn't have, a hospital. One of the things that Cecilia Stupas, our director of MIT Medical, has done is created a field hospital at MIT, which parenthetically we're working with her and her leadership team to support. That's offloading some of the other major medical centers. Because we're not a hospital, because we're not a medical school, we are free to distribute broadly across all of the greater Boston and Cambridge area, all of Massachusetts, and indeed all of New England and throughout the world. We now are in a position where we've pretty much exhausted what stores exist at MIT, and now we have to require from manufacturers around the world. Because we're competing with supply, we have to pay in advance. So the funding shortage is actually quite substantial. We can only bring in that which we can afford to buy and that which we can afford to distribute. So the truth is that if a PPE cost $1 to $2 and we want to bring in 4 million of these, because as you heard Marty say, we're going through in Massachusetts alone about 1.5 million face shields, forget any other PPE, a month, then our funding shortage is in the millions of dollars. Now, right now, the Vice President for Research, the President's Office, our institute, Marty's project have all funded this, but that's it. We don't have any more discretionary funds. So it is substantial.
Is the transportation team of MIT helping at all breaking down the supply chain bottlenecks on PPEs?
Yes. So both the academic side as well as the facility side. Joe Higgins in campus services, Marty O'Brien in the mailroom and distribution are active partners in this. Every office, as Professor Culpepper showed, that has resources has contributed. We're using all of our trucks to distribute. And parenthetically, we started doing this almost a month ago when we got a hint that this was coming up, and we're well out in front of a lot of other entities that are doing the same. What's happened now as time gone on is that we're coalescing with other local universities, other major medical centers, and other entities, charitable entities that are trying to do the same thing. Marty and I spend almost the entirety of our day doing only this. I haven't been this busy in years. The bulk of it is in coordinating not just the distribution, but with working, as some of the people have questioned, with other organizations.
Mm-hmm. Another question coming in is, are there open source designs that can be shared with other locations to save on transport and logistics?
We've got some open source designs in terms of, there's a ventilator project that's been put up open source. You know, one of the things to be cautious about is the internet is replete with designs that have been shared. And those designs, there's no guarantee that they've actually been engineered or created so that they do what they're supposed to versus looking like they do what they're supposed to. So one has to be very careful when you get into, you know, sharing designs with people. The face shield, for example, everybody that has asked to have that design shared, almost everybody has talked about modifying it to make it easier to make. And we have to explain to them that, you know, we would have done that, but, you know, it has to be this way so that it does what the doctors need it to do. It's actually a fairly complicated, it looks simple, right? We shot for simple, but it actually has a variety of features in it that have been engineered, for example, some biseability in the structural components, etc. And when people get their hands on these things, you have to be very concerned about, you know, sharing. There's also the issue too that they need to be manufactured in a specific way, quality control. And if you try to manufacture them in other ways, actually the plastic becomes brittle and it won't bend and form the way it's supposed to. So there are some open source designs. And then of course the research is open source, but there are some things we have to be very thoughtful about in terms of, do we open source them to make sure that we don't have you know, a flood of things that are out there that end up not doing the job that they're supposed to do, because then all the ones that are out there that are good, then people don't know if they can trust them.
Sure. Here's an interesting question. When we're ready to reopen schools, K through 12 and upper education, what's expected for students to wear? And can this initiative help the education sector to be ready to start open schools again?
That's a wonderful question. One of the things that we have been dealing with, the leadership meetings that we have every morning at MIT, and then our interactions with the federal and state regulations, is how do we re-enter into the workplace, into the school place? It's very likely that this will change in each region. So there's no fixed one good practice. It's hard to imagine that there will not be an expectation, even in re-entry, of keeping distances, wearing some degree of masks. And it may very well be that we will screen people, for example, with remote temperature testing, the way you do when you enter from an airport, as well as in more high-risk situations, screening people for the presence of antibodies or even the presence of active virus. Those things are the elements of research that are going on right now at MIT, and they raise serious social and ethical issues as well that we're dealing with. So the short answer is, life will not be the same. Exactly what it will look like is hard to predict, and it's probably going to vary from region to region and place to place.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. What types of CFD analysis has been done to prove back to the open source, prove out some of those open source designs, if any?
So CFD, so I'm assuming they mean computational fluid dynamics.
Mhm.
I would need more information on that question. I'm not quite sure how that applies to what's being asked, but if they can provide some more information, I want to answer that way.
Okay.
So there are testing, there is an effort both for testing and validation of the materials that we make. It's going on. Greg Rutledge in chemical engineering is, for example, directing much of his laboratory to testing materials. It's not a simple thing because there are at least 2 different federal agencies that guide testing of materials, and MIT wants to be really careful not in this era to project that it is more than it is doing. There are a variety of tests for every PPE that that traditionally would be used. Whenever we introduce a PPE into a medical center, we go through an internal review board, an IRB expedited review, both for wearability, efficacy, safety, efficiency, and then there are a variety of tests that can be done on site. Each site has its own demands. So when we took these face shields in, we didn't just bring a box. We brought a box. The sites evaluated the prototypes. They commented on the prototypes. The absolutely remarkable thing about Marty's team is the turnaround time from first prototype to final product. Marty, how many was it? Something like 28 different?
28 revisions, I think, in the span of 7 days, roughly.
And so it is not the case that we just took something that Marty made and introduced it. We took something Marty made, we looked at it, we brought it to people who used it, we used it under a variety of considerations. In terms of formal testing, that formal testing cannot be done at MIT right now, but it's something that is being up and being evaluated as we go forward.
Mm-hmm.
So for example, with the face shield, our EHS, there are standards for face shields. They've actually conducted tests to show that they will pass these, but they're not certified to certify them. And the face shields right now are operating under an emergency use authorization because of the current situation. But what Elazer says is right. We have at MIT what we have to be able to make sure that what we send to people is going to do the job. And there's a variety of different ways we've done that, either through our friends in EHS helping us out, folks in the hospital who have been great in giving us feedback, but then also people that we've had contact with that are talking to the FDA that help us understand in the current situation, what is it that these things have to do? How do they have to be assessed? And then what's the bar for making sure that it's okay to put them into a hospital? But then also the hospitals have to make their own decisions.
Okay. This is an interesting request from Mike Jackness, 97. He's asking, is there a K through 12 flow down content based on your work for kids at home and local PTAs to engage with your work to learn the behind the scenes of this process? For instance, a longer form of the MBC piece with more history of the early failed prototypes.
So what's interesting is that some of the most imaginative, some of the most creative, and some of the most wonderful ideas come from not kids. I don't call them kids, children. Marty didn't tell you, but he should, that it's his children who help with the design. And we have been speaking in our time to kids who are at home. It's actually remarkable. I think, Mike, it's a great idea and something perhaps that our communications departments and officers at MIT can formalize to help contribute back to what the kids did. The 12-year-old girl, Sienna Zhao, who showed that, captured beautifully all the elements of what MIT is doing. And you should hear from Marty about how his children contributed to the design.
Well, I'm not sure I want to tell that story. It makes me look bad, essentially. So people might understand that there are a lot of people working long, hard hours. Elazer and I emailing back and forth at 1, 2, 3 o'clock in the morning, other people as well. And long story short, Dad was very punchy. He was tired. I was trying to figure out the right way to get the elastics to hook onto the shield, to pull the shield and keep it against the head. Couldn't figure it out. My kids were at the breakfast bar, and then my daughter, who is not shy, she's a little nerd, she loves to build things. She said, well, here, Dad, let me see. And between the two of them, they figured it out. And I immediately walked over to the dining room table where I am right now, drew up a pad, we went downstairs, we cut it on the laser cutter, and the thing worked. It worked perfect. In addition to K through 12, I've already received several emails just from people here at MIT that are teaching classes. And they've asked questions. They say, all right, we're teaching a materials class. Tell us about X, Y, and Z. And we want to show the students the video, what's going on, and then have them look at the materials being used and why it's okay, et cetera. So that has already started to filter in an informal way into some of the things that are happening at MIT. But like Elazer says, this is a good example for students, parents that are interested in STEM, to be able to see how you combine medicine, science, engineering to solve a real problem.
Mm-hmm.
So we will follow up. Just to add some element that you may not fully appreciate, within a matter of literally a week, MIT put its entire curriculum online. There were extraordinary people, Sanjay Sharma and Krishna, just through open courseware, WebEx and EDX, got courses online. But we didn't just take our courses and put the lectures as a voiceover PowerPoint. I teach a large 15-unit course for graduate students, and we completely revised the curriculum. So it now actually has within this course, which is the mathematics and science of cardiovascular disease, quantitative cardiovascular pathophysiology, entire section on crisis in cardiovascular diseases and the cardiovascular manifestations of COVID. And these ideas of how you protect people from cardiovascular disease is an important element. So just as we're doing for our students, for our graduate students, it would be a great idea to do for a K-12 curriculum.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I'm getting a request to actually see a face shield on camera. Is there a face shield in either of your office right now that you could demonstrate for us?
1 minute.
Good.
Say, Martin.
This is what we've been waiting for.
Oh, well, the one that I have, I've got two. One shows it in its flat configuration, but that's downstairs. So in the interest of time, I'll show you the one that's folded up. So if you look from the side, this is what it looks like from the top. And then this is from the front. I'm not going to put it on because that'll be comical. But as you saw in the video, people really appreciate, just the fact that MIT would do something like this. Elazer has been in the hospitals with people when they've used these, and he can tell you about the reactions that they've had. I myself just getting email all the time. And when Elazer and I say, let us know if you want to help or what we can do, we really mean that. We respond to every email. And so, for example, I got an email today from a nurse that said, we only have face shields that are like a piece of plastic that just hang down from a set of goggles. How do I buy? How can I get these? And we sent a box of 120 some to the hospital today. So, this has been a great project for us, both from the sense that this is what MIT was built to do. It's really having an impact on people. But then there is a lot of peripheral benefit to this in terms of our students, and then as a learning moment, not only for MIT and how we can help out, but for example, in future pandemics, how other people can adopt the practices that we put in place here at MIT.
Marty, people didn't see it as well. Do you want to maybe show, or you want me to put up the slide? Do you have a slide that you can show?
About ready to do it. It is very difficult to take pictures of things that are transparent. All right, so here's a picture. This is Robin. She's one of the technical instructors in a makerspace. and she's wearing this thing shown sideways. And then I think what I'll do just really quickly is let me just get to a part in the video. I'll just run this. In the other video, it ran pretty quickly. So right now, I think everyone can see this is flat. And they'll just go through and they'll fold it up here real quickly. And then there's a picture of the person wearing it, a video, which I think actually does better because you can see it from multiple angles. So in the interest of time, I'm just going to move us along here.
It's remarkably comfortable to wear. You have to understand that we have to wear these for up to 8 hours a day.
So the reason I pulled this up is that we knew about the problems with seeing this. So some of the folks that are in the shops came up with the idea of highlighting the edges in blue. So I hope this helps everybody to be able to visualize.
Great, thank you. So on behalf of the Alumni Association, thank you for tuning into the Faculty Forum online, and thank you to both our professors. The Alumni Office will be sure to forward all your questions that were not addressed today on air. And as a reminder, all of our broadcasts are recorded, and you can tweet about today's chat using the hashtag MIT alum, and send all follow-up questions or feedback to alumnilearn@edu. And a thank you again for watching. And I want to give a special thanks to both our professors who are just working tirelessly, and everyone is just, in the comments saying, thank you, how can we say thank you? So, we'll have ways that you can support and keep supporting this fabulous work. So thank you all.
Thank you.
Weekend.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Take care.
Thanks for joining us. And for more information on how to connect with the MIT Alumni Association, please visit our website.